Welcome to the Natural History Cupboard. Come on in.
And welcome back to the Natural History Cupboard podcast, where the weird and wonderful parts of the natural world come together. I'm your host, Gareth, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Aaron. Aaron, welcome back. We're back.
Welcome back. Welcome into 2025.
Yeah.
We are actually recording this on New Year's Day.
Yeah, it's day one.
Technically.
And episode one of this year. So yeah.
Start as you mean to continue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What have you been up to over our sort of break?
Over the Christmas break, I've been in Gran Canaria.
Yeah.
On Gran Canaria, I should say. Whilst I was there, saw a couple of lovely Gran Canaria wall geckos.
Nice.
Endemic to Gran Canaria. So
Yeah.
that was really cool. Because there is a couple other wall geckos. I tell a lie, actually, it's endemic to Gran Canaria, but I believe that's the species that they released into a small part on the Spanish mainland. But that one actually might be the eastern wall gecko, which comes from the east, the Canary Islands that are a little bit further east.
No.
I need to look into that, but it's a gorgeous gecko, and one that I want to do a creature feature on now. However, I'm going to hopefully line it up for this year.
Yeah.
But I want to gather some actual footage.
Are you going to go out again and
go
get
out
some
and
footage?
specifically go out and get some footage? It was literally a few doors down from the in-laws' house. So
Nice.
both geckos.
Were you just hanging around other people's gardens?
Well, I will be now. Yes.
So watch out, Gran Canaria police. He'll be the one who's stalking in the bushes looking for
a
geckos.
torch and a camera.
No, that's cool. Did you get anything good for Christmas?
Oh, for Christmas. Well,
other
yes.
than the cool shirt.
Oh, this was a gift, kind of a gift to myself, but because I've spoken about it so much on the podcast. When I saw this shirt, I had to get it. But if you can see, it's kind of like the Jaws poster, but it says orcas, and it's got, I assume, a Spanish or Portuguese person's boat with 3 orcas coming up to play with it.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a cool one. It's a cool one. Yeah. But I was very lucky because between my family and Santa, I got a new wetsuit.
Nice.
And I've got you remember when I did the Black Mamba episode?
Yeah.
And I spoke about Kobe Bryant on the kind of the anniversary of his death this year. The Lakers played in a commemorative kit, right?
Yeah.
It emulated Black Mamba scales and stuff. Well, I was extremely lucky to get the jersey for that strip, but not only a jersey, because he's not alive no more. So, but it wasn't like one of the actual living players now. It is actually a jersey, and it's got his number 8 on the front, but his number 24 on the back, and Bryant written on it. So, and it's got down the sides, it kind of commemorates all of his achievements in basketball, like MVP, blah 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 blah. It's just really, really cool jersey. Yeah, so I'll put a photo up behind us. Yeah. What about you? What did you get up to? What did you get?
Well, I went to you went to a lovely warm tropical island. I went to the lovely not so warm and tropical North Wales.
Yeah.
No, we went up to my parents for Christmas, and amongst other things, we also went to check on my dad's boat that's been out of the water for the winter, which thankfully it's out of the water, and was out of the water when we had that massive storm Dara a couple of months ago, because there were a lot of boats there that were sort of like up in dry dock, essentially.
That was less than a month ago, Gareth.
Oh, well, there you go. Basically, some of the ships there, or the boats, they were up on stilts, like most of them are out of the water, and they've got big gouges taken out of them where they've just slammed against things, and a lot of damage.
Did he remove it because the storm was coming?
No. He had it out of the water over winter so he can do work on it. I'm trying to convince him at the moment to have a camera below water so we can try and spot whales or something like that. Although whenever I'm on that boat, whales never turn up. They always go as far away in the opposite direction. Just my luck. But I did get the Lego set that I've been after for a while. Thanks to my wife. It's the insect one.
Oh
the,
yeah,
the three insects, which
nice.
I still haven't built the butterfly yet. I've built the Hercules beetle and the praying mantis, both of which are awesome. They're stunning builds, and they're going to take pride of place on the Lego shelf.
I did see that Drew also got the Kingfisher, Lego Kingfisher.
Drew got the Kingfisher.
Very nice, very nice.
I think that's quite a nice one. It's not my favorite, that one.
No,
there's something about it. It's just, I don't know. There's something about it. It's not as good as the insect ones, but he already had the insect ones.
the insect
annoying.
ones are good. Yeah.
But yeah, I think other than that, well, I got a voucher for a garden centre, so I can go and buy plants, which kind of ties into today's creature feature, which will become apparent in a bit. But yeah, no, that's pretty much it. We went and walked around a wildlife reserve, wildlife trust, one up near Manchester. Afterwards, like met up with my brother and had all the like cousins and children and everything running around the place, and went for a walk in like the reed beds with that fog that come down over those sort of couple of days as well. It was very spooky going through reed beds. Mate, where you could barely see in front of yourself.
I'll tell you what's spooky about that fog. Boxing Day was the day that we came back.
Yeah.
We didn't see the runway until we landed on it. That was weird. Like, it was quite, up there, you're above the clouds, and then you come down through the clouds and
then
you think,
you're in the
this
cloud.
is thick cloud. And then you're like, this is really thick cloud. And then you're like, this is really, really thick cloud. This is really, really fog.
And we're on the ground. I'm surprised you were able to come back. Like, there's a lot of planes got cancelled.
Yeah. Well, there was fog in the UK, but we took off in Gran Canaria during a calima. Do you know what calima is? Did you
other
experience
than
it when you...
calima?
It's when a sandstorm or a windstorm, dust storm has picked up loads of sand from the Sahara, and basically says, Africa don't want this no more. You have it, Spain, and it just dumps over the Canary Islands. You can tell it's coming because the horizon gets blurry, and then you stop seeing the other islands in the distance, and then sunsets and sunrises go really gold and red, and then you can almost feel it.
Used to get that in Adelaide where it would come in from the outback.
Oh
yeah,
and
it looks weird when that happens.
Yeah,
but
they usually cancel planes in the Canary Islands for that. So we took off in Calimo and we came down.
Doubly lucky then to get back.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Should we head into this week's news? Because there has been a load of news that has been happening over the sort of Christmas break. So let's take a look at that.
I have a feeling we're going to catch up with some of it over the next week or so.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's the news!
Right, well, we're into this week's news. Aaron, you can take us out for the first news story of the year. What are we looking at?
Well, for first news story of the year, I have one coming to us from The Guardian, which is a UK newspaper. And the headline is, Sturgeons caught around British coast raise hopes of return to UK rivers. Now, for those that don't know, the 6-meter long armored European sturgeon is a fish that's been around since the dinosaurs. And it went extinct roughly around 70 years ago in the 1950s. But recent incidences of it being caught in fishing nets as bycatch off the coast of Britain, or the British Isles, I should say, may point to the successes of rewilding efforts in France and Germany, where they are actually reintroducing the species into their rivers. So
there are talks of doing it here as well.
Hopefully that goes ahead, because if this is anything to go by, they're trying to get here.
Yeah, that's cool. So my first article of the year, we'll start off with a silly one, but also a sad one at the same time. This is the unfortunate news that Bert, the crocodile, who was in the Crocodile Dundee films, which I don't particularly remember there being too many. I always thought it was just stock footage of crocodiles, but was Bert specifically. The reason why I say it's quite well, he's unfortunately passed away at the age of 90, which is sad in
That's
itself.
also not
It's not
anywhere
a
near
massively
the
like
life
full
expectancy.
yeah. But still a fairly decent age for a crocodile. And wouldn't be the first time that we've talked about a crocodile.
No, who was
getting
the other
its
one?
that was one
It was
in the
like
Northern Territory on a
he was ancient, wasn't he?
yeah,
Over 100 years or something like that.
one of the biggest ones in captivity, I think.
Yeah,
Well, the reason why I say it's kind of funny is because where I found this particular bit is from the Daily Mail,
of course.
which are the bastion of brilliant, brilliant journalism.
The Daily Fail.
I love this so much because it's a picture of. I sent this to you when I saw
Yes, you
this.
did. Yeah.
I went, can you spot any problems with this picture?
My answer was that it was fake teeth, and then I didn't. Then I kind of realized, oh.
So the picture, which I'll now have up on the screen, is Bert the Crocodile from the comedy adventure film, who starred alongside Paul Hogan on the right, just in case you couldn't tell the human Paul Hogan from Bert the Crocodile. Died in captivity in Darwin and was estimated to be over 90 years of age. Now, for anyone who's ever worked with any kind of crocodilian, you generally can't sit there with your arm around them like it's a Labrador. So that's because that's a fake crocodile that he sat there with. So that's not even Bert the Crocodile. So yeah, just a bit of good reporting there on the Daily Mail's part, showing a very, very fake crocodile sat next to a human and still having to point out the difference. So yeah, sadly, Bert is no longer with us, but he still made us laugh.
He had the last laugh.
Exactly.
So my next one comes to us from Sign News Online, and the article headline is Paleontologists discover new species of sauropodomorph dinosaur in China. So a newly discovered dinosaur species, Lichulon wangyi, lies in the heart of the early sauropodomorph sauropod transition, according to a paper that was published in the journal Peer J.
Nice.
It basically would have roamed the supercontinent Laurasia during the early Jurassic epoch, approximately 193 million years ago. So it's a really cool bit of news.
They're an odd group, the sauropodomorphs.
Mm.
So my next one comes from Monga Bay, and it's not a happy one. This one, this is actually just shockingly large numbers that I thought we had to report on. It is Monga Bay, from Monga Bay, basically saying Nigerian authorities have seized 2 metric tons of pangolin scales in a bust of late, and they've arrested 1 suspect. Now that is an unbelievable quantity of pangolin scales for these already endangered animals. But on December the 5th, Nigerian authorities seized more than 2 metric tons of pangolin scales in yet another effort to clamp down on the country's booming international wildlife trade. And sadly, yeah, Nigeria seems to be a hub for a lot of these sort of deals to go down. So let's hope it stops before the pangolins are no longer there. You know?
Yeah. Do you know what that reminds me of? When they did that seizure of Tiger Temple in Thailand, and they found not just the live tigers in awful conditions, but they have freezers and walk-in fridges full
bits of tiger.
Yeah, it was
whole tiger.
Horrendous stuff.
Get your tiger how you like it, basically.
Well, my next article is a happier news article, and it's somewhat topical because the last creature feature that I did was for the Christmas special, and it was on turtle doves. So we're going back to the Guardian newspaper again, where they've reported on turtle doves. Ban on annual shoot raises hopes for endangered bird. So I mentioned in the creature feature that a ban in Western Europe on shooting these birds as they migrate through has seen a 25% population increase in that area. But the news today is that they actually are now seeing an increase in turtle doves coming back into the UK as a result.
Nice.
So yeah, that again, super
shocking.
Happy news.
Stop shooting them. They'll spread out. They'll spread out more.
So, was it the UK or another country or a combination of both that was saying that no, shooting's not shooting's not the reason why these are going.
I think that was Italy and Spain, wasn't it? Or Italy and Portugal.
Might have had something to do with Malta as well. Either
Yeah.
way, evidence.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool.
So my final one is a good news story. So I've given you, a sad but funny one and a truly sad one, but this is a good news article. Tiny snails not seen for more than 100 years in the wild, saved from extinction by Chester Zoo. So these snails will be reintroduced to the Desertas Islands, which are a group of small islands off the coast of the Madeira Archipelago, which is in the Atlantic. So pretty much just up from where you've been over Christmas.
It's pretty much directly north from the Canary Islands. And then I think if you go northwest, again, you end up in the Azores.
Yeah, so all of those Atlantic islands have got unique wildlife, and a lot of people probably wouldn't even think of those snails. But yes, there you go. They are reintroducing them, and another reason why zoos are vitally important.
Absolutely,
not just the big charismatic megafauna; it's the small stuff, and these are tiny snails. These.
Yeah, have you ever seen them in the flesh?
I've never seen them in the flesh. No.
Well, that just about wraps it up for this week's headlines, but I'm going to jump into the main article this week, the first main article of the year. It's not a particularly happy one from my point of view, but it's always good to have new information to change our opinions when it comes to science and our understanding of the world.
Oh, were you ready to die on that hill, were you?
No, I wasn't ready to die on that hill. I was ready to do a creature feature this year on it, though.
Oh, right.
It's in my list. Yeah, which is
Fair
now
enough.
Gonna have to be rubbed out.
You could change it to a slightly different one, I suppose, but yeah.
Yes, but unfortunately, the group it's been passed into has already been covered in a creature feature by Drew. But this, I've chosen this. There's a couple different places reporting it, and in fact, Gareth brought it to my attention. But I've chosen to go with the write-up from Everything Dinosaur. And the headline is: New research suggests that Saurophaganax is not a valid taxon anymore, despite having one of the coolest names. Which means the Lord of Lizard Eaters. So a recently published scientific paper has challenged this species' validity, unfortunately, and it seems to have a pretty strong argument against its validity, in fact. So as of now, the species name Saurophaganax, what was the second part of its name? Saurophaganax maximus. Has
a big Lord of Lizard.
Exactly. not the little Lord of Lizards.
No.
Lizard eaters. No. It's now considered nomen dubium.
Yeah.
Which means dubious name. Basically, it's not recognized anymore.
And the other one would be nomen oblitium or oblivium, if you remember,
which
from
is when it's
our Megalosaur
completely
episode.
Eradicated,
It's
isn't
just
it?
pretty much no longer talked about.
So yeah, at least it's not gone that far, but it pretty much means it is that far. So in 1995, paleontologist Daniel Chur erected a genus Saurophaganax to describe an extremely large allosaurid dinosaur that had been excavated from Kenton Quarry in Cimarron County, Oklahoma, back in the 30s. The site itself wasn't well supervised at all. So obviously there would have been errors and random things happening there. But basically, apart from having a not well supervised site, it has itself a bit of a dodgy history anyway. In fact, it's pretty much been considered a chimera, or it's been thought of that it could be a chimeric kind of,
just all the bits sort of
lots of different bits from different animals kind of put together. They've thought that for a long time, but yeah, now it's going to be classified as a new taxon of Allosaurus. The currently proposed name is Allosaurus anax, which means Lord of the Allosaurs. Which is, again, it's quite a cool name, actually. Yeah.
It's better than, I gotta admit, it's better than Allosaurus fragilis.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
Fragile Allosaur.
But this is something that happens time and time again as new information it becomes apparent. Scientists and people who are into science have to kind of adapt and change with these changes.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that, in fact, no, it's not a shame that Saurophaganax was in for this year's creature features, because had I done it in previous years,
it would be completely and
that would be
utterly-
obsolete.
Well, it's like some of the prehistoric ones we have done are now out of date.
Yeah,
Dunkleosteus.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But other good examples of this are, as you said, Megalosaurus.
Yeah.
That went through it with oh, it's a really funny one. What was it called again? Something
Scrotum humanum.
Scrotum humanum. And then not quite as comical, but actually technically incorrect. The Tyrannosaurus Rex had one.
Manospondylus gigas.
That's it. But I can't remember why. I think Tyrannosaurus Rex was
It just
chosen
became the
because it
popular
sounded
name.
cooler, didn't it? It
Yeah.
was more popular, yeah.
But this
But
is yet
technically
again...
that should Manospondylus would have been the correct one, because that was the first one it was named under.
Yeah. But this isn't a case of which one was named first.
No, this is a case of it's
not
very
what we thought
messy
it was.
discovery, very messy history. Now we know it is a chimera of sorts, and it's not what we thought, and we found out more about the animal.
Really reluctant to do Spinosaurus.
Yeah, how funny.
Maybe this year I'll do Spinosaurus.
How funny would it be if you do Spinosaurus this year, and then next year they find out that the spine, the sail, was actually from an animal it was eating. Yeah, and it had nothing to do with Spinosaurus.
Actually, it was 2 pairs of giant wings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know how? Do you know what? I'd probably love that news as much as I'd hate that news. Just for the chaos it would cause in like the Jurassic Park community of fans.
God. Do you know how I found out about the Saurophaganax thing?
How?
Not through a serious scientific article. No. It was through the memes.
Yeah,
there's paleo memes of Saurophaganax that just started appearing, and I was like, is it no longer considered? Oh no, it's no longer considered valid. So
whilst looking for I can't remember if it was on this article, on this write up of the article. In fact, it probably was, because everything dinosaur deals with like kind of dinosaur models and toys and stuff. But in one of the articles I was reading, I specifically remember someone was saying that one of the toy companies, can't remember if it was Rebor or what are the other popular ones, Schleich or someone like that, had only just brought out a model of Saurophaganax.
That's a bit
based on what it was like before. So
you just got yourself a slightly bigger Allosaurus.
Also, usually mistakes, I assume not in the paleo art community, but usually mistakes, if you find mistakes or misprints or something like on Lego, or quite famously on the Wicked Funko Pops that have come out for that movie. I'll tell you that out of recording, because that's funny, but it's not safe for somebody in our audience. Sometimes those kind of things actually make something more valuable financially. So but that's the end of the news. So for the first episode of this year.
Well, should we head into our creature feature, our first one of the year?
You can tee it off.
Yes. Oh, it's golf. Yeah, we're doing golf. Anyway, let's do that.
Let's do it.
It's the creature feature.
Right. Well, we're into this week's creature feature, the first for this year. And to start things off, I thought we'd look at a species of plant first off. And it's a species of plant that I can guarantee you've either heard of in some way, shape, or form, or you may even actually be consuming some of this particular plant right now. You might even be enjoying, you can bring yours out now, you might even be enjoying a nice cuppa right now. And we're of course talking about tea this week. So I think you've got yourself a nice bear mug there.
I have.
Yeah,
nice bear mug.
I've got my nice rude insect mug. It's got everything from the hoo-hoo beetle to the Texasanus and the sparkle muffin spider on it, which just brilliant names. Anyway, but we're not talking about sparkle muffins. We're talking about tea. Now, what is tea? Do you know?
I know it's a plant, and that some people drink it.
Yeah. You're not a massive fan.
I don't like tea in the slightest.
No?
This is how much I like this podcast. I'm drinking tea for the podcast.
Well,
disgusting drink.
Sacrilege that. My biggest problem is I like my tea when it's like cooled down a bit. Usually, I don't have enough time to drink a cup of tea. When
Right.
everyone else has drunk their scalding hot drink,
Yeah.
I'm still left behind, just starting to sip it.
That's the thing. I don't like hot drinks. I don't
Yeah,
like tea. Don't like coffee. I barely like hot chocolate. Just don't
yeah.
like hot drinks.
Tea's about my favorite one.
Mm.
It'll be controversial. I guarantee you, someone will
Oh yeah, someone
have
will
someone to
kick
say
off.
something about it. So anyway, tea essentially only comes from one plant. It's Camellia sinensis, and it's native to Asia. It grows in countries like China, India, Sri Lanka, and Japan. There are a huge amount of varieties of tea that are prepared for people, including things like black tea, green tea, white tea, and oolong tea, which I've only ever had just black tea, which is just what you're drinking now, normal tea.
Mm.
But it depends on how the leaves are processed, but they all come from the same plant. And we'll look at how many varieties there are as we go on. Now, camellias are a group of plants which you may be more familiar with in growing them in your garden. They are widespread across southern Asia. Almost all of them are found in southern China and into Indochina as well, but up into places like Nepal, Tibet, Bhutan. So the Himalayas downwards into Indochina. And essentially, they are a group of plants that, well, most people have in their garden because they've got nice flowers.
Mm.
They're a nice looking sort of shrubby bush, but that also includes the tea plant as well. The species that we're looking at, though, the tea plant, is found above the cloud line in the Himalayas. So it likes to be up on mountain slopes where it's getting a good soaking of rain and can tolerate temperatures that get pretty chilly. It can go down to 10 degrees easily, if not lower sometimes. And obviously in the Himalayas, it does get relatively relatively cold.
Yeah.
They're an evergreen as well, and they basically are sort of a small. It depends how you want to term them because they're pretty much a small tree or bush.
I didn't know that they were evergreen.
Yeah, they're continuously that long or that nice shiny green shape. I don't think tea would have caught on if it was a deciduous
it wouldn't
plant.
have. It makes perfect sense
Yeah.
that it's evergreen. It's just I'd never. To be honest, I've never even
Thought about tea.
given it the time of day to think about that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's fair enough. We don't tend to think of it. If anything, it takes a back seat to coffee a lot of the time, and people are still sort of not sure where coffee comes from in a lot of places. We'll do coffee at some point as well.
I won't.
I know I don't like coffee.
I won't be drinking coffee. That's for sure. That's even less tolerable.
Yeah, I like the smell, don't like the taste,
I can't.
which is annoying because it does smell nice. Anyway, these tea bushes, they're evergreen shrubs that are usually cultivated to be below 2 meters in height, but they can actually get a lot taller than that, up to about 5 or 6 meters tall at the highest, if they're wild tea bushes. But by this point, and what we're looking at today, we're looking at essentially the domesticated plant in a lot of ways.
Do you know if the wild one tastes different than the domestic one?
I don't know. I couldn't find anything on people going and finding the wild one. However, I would imagine that you probably could just go and pick wild leaves off it.
The reason why is because we've got wild strawberries here, and I've tasted wild banana and wild mango.
Yeah,
when I've been out of these places, and there is a definite taste difference. So I just wondered if
I imagine you probably could. I imagine it's the same sort of principle that the non-domesticated plant, and all that it's domesticated for in this sort of sense is that we cultivate it onto a hillside and have a monoculture of that plant and trim it to be a certain height so that you can reach the leaves that you want to get to, as opposed to having to get a ladder to go up each individual one. So yeah, I imagine that you could probably quite easily use the leaves off a wild tea plant. It's got flowers on it as well, quite pretty little flowers, nothing like the sort of camellias that people have in their garden for their flowers, which are quite big, noticeably pink through to red coloured flowers. These are small, they're about 2.5 to 4 centimeters in diameter, and they're white, sort of a whitey yellow colour. with about 8 petals on them. The leaves themselves, they're nothing remarkable to look at. We're not talking about some sort of bizarre leaf that sort of stands out. You know, if you think of leaves that are our sort of standout, maple leaf is one. It's on the Canadian flag.
Yep.
An oak leaf.
I
All
was
of
gonna
those
say oak,
are
yeah.
uniquely shaped leaves. These are just 4 to 15 centimeter long, green oval shaped leaves that are kind of glossy in
Very
color.
standard.
Yeah, you could put a bunch of tea leaves next to a bunch of other plant leaves, and you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference just by looking at them. However, if you started chewing on them or started boiling them up, you get about 4% caffeine from those leaves, so not a huge amount. We're not talking, you know, some sort of. There is a plant in Africa called cat, which has got a natural amphetamine in it, and you get a lot of people who sit there and chew these leaves of these bushes to basically get a natural amphetamine from it. Tea is not like that, although you could sit there and chew tea leaves. I don't know whether it would taste any good. I don't know. So maybe we'll do coffee, then we'll do cat. That sounds weird. This has gone off the rails already, and it's only the first episode of the season. So that 4% caffeine that they have, as well as compounds such as theobromine, which is found in, and we've covered this plant in the past.
We have covered that before.
You've covered this particular plant. We're going for all the good leaves on this one.
I can't remember, but I do remember talking about it.
Well, it being that time of the year where, you know, there's still tubs and tubs of selection boxes and leftover.
Oh, of course.
It's
of
chocolate.
Course.
Theobromine is found in chocolate, and it's one of
Yeah.
those chemicals that your brain really likes.
Certainly does.
And so that with caffeine is a really useful thing to get people to go, oh, you know what? I like this. I'll cultivate it. And just like coffee, that's exactly what we did. We basically cultivated this plant heavily and came up with a huge amount of different uses for it. So the leaf itself produces different qualities depending on what you do with it. So all those different varieties of tea that I talked about before, black tea, white tea, the process that they use to produce those are all different from each other, and the different types of leaves produce different qualities as well. Usually the tip and the buds, the first 2 to 3 leaves, are harvested to basically go into just tea in itself. And these are usually hand-picked, and it's repeated every 1 to 2 weeks. And you've probably seen images of the sort of classic images like Sri Lanka and places like that, where it's usually local women who'll stand there and they're hand picking each bush and then putting them into a bag on their back. That's essentially how it's done. It's been done the same way for thousands of years, wherever we've grown tea. There are 4 varieties or subspecies of Camellia sinensis that are recognized, and 2 of them are more popular than the others. So there's Camellia sinensis, which is what we're looking at. Camellia sinensis assamica. Have you ever heard of Assam tea? It's more popular in places like China and parts of India. Then there's Camellia sinensis puhabilima, which I have totally butchered that one. And Camellia sinensis dehengenensis. Dehungensis. We'll go with that. So of these, I'm glad that it is just sinensis and assamica are the 2 main varieties that are grown commercially, because it means I don't have to try and remember how to pronounce the other 2. The other 2 are still cultivated and still grown for the same purposes, but it's usually in sort of smaller localized areas. On the global market, it is those 2 varieties of Camellia sinensis and assamica that are basically grown.
Any reason why they were favored?
They just seem to be the ones that people have favored and cultivated.
So they probably taste better.
Yeah, they either probably grow quicker or just easier to spread, or were just more available. The history around tea is insane.
And that's before you get to America. That's insane.
Oh, I
Like,
haven't even
Over in
I haven't
Asia,
even
it's
touched.
insane alone.
I haven't even touched on
Hmm.
America. I have focused more on. Well, we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
In 2017, Chinese scientists sequenced the genome of the Asamica variant and basically found that it contained 3 billion base pairs of chromosomes, which is larger than most plants previously sequenced.
Hmm.
So T is complex. It's it's better than most other plants. Tea as a drink has been around for thousands of years. It has legends around its origin, and this legend is that in 2737 BC, Chinese emperor and renowned herbalist Shen Nung was sitting under a tree while his servant was boiling water,
Right.
as you do. Chinese mythology states that a leaf from a tea plant above him fell into the water. Think of this like Newton, but with leaves and not hitting him on the head. Shen Nung then decided to just taste the concoction and went, "Oh, I like this," and we'll call it tea. That's one story around this. But according to another variation on this legend, Shen Nung was actually poisoned and had been poisoned by a variety of different things. Don't know whether it was other people doing it to him or whether he'd be just going around sticking other plants in boiling water.
Right.
And supposedly he was poisoned. He was near death, but a leaf from a nearby tea plant fell into his mouth and it revived him. Somewhat like some sort of in-game item, just the potion thing.
That's like what happens with Super Mario and the mushrooms.
Yes, it does sort of call back to that. And there would be definitely people would say, yes, tea is one of those reviving drinks. It does make you feel better after sort of, just a hard day's work. Regardless of how tea first came to be, used by humans, it's incredibly difficult to know the truth as to how this has come about. But at some point, we decided to start boiling leaves and drinking them. In fact, some of the very first uses for tea were not actually as a drink.
Oh no!
Actually, to be eaten in salads. And sort of
I was
as
going to
foods.
ask. That was a question from earlier, and I forgot to ask you.
Also start to take a big influence on Western culture as well. In fact, the world began to learn of the China's tea secrets in around the 1600s, and this kicked off essentially a tea war. Now, when I say tea wars to you'd probably think of America and people throwing crates of tea into Boston Harbor.
Yeah.
Not even close. Not even close. That doesn't come close to a bunch of American yahoos throwing some tea in the water and all the fish going, "This is nice." So no, this is very much competition between Britain and the Dutch and the Spanish and a variety of European powers at this point who were all on the rise and starting to spread out. The British Empire was spreading out at this point. So was the Dutch influence in the East Indies as well. So think of the East India Trading Company that was run by the Dutch and everything. Well, we basically start to see a huge outpouring of money to get tea back to the UK and get it back to Europe as well. And in fact, the first ship to carry tea from China to London, the Oriental, cost around $70,000 to build. That was $70,000 at the time, which would be extortionate nowadays. It was a small price to pay, though, for a very lucrative crop. And in fact, you may have even heard of one of these famous ships, which came to be known as tea clippers.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a tea clipper?
I think I have, but I'm not going to say it because I've also just read it.
That's fine.
So, on your notes.
Tea clippers were basically ships that were built to be fast. The whole point of this was you had to get from China all the way around, not through the Suez Canal, because that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You've got to get all the way around the Horn of Africa and back up to Europe as quickly as possible. Because if you could get that from China to there in a good state, you could obviously sell it for higher amounts of money. So it was all about money and doing it as fast as possible. And the one ship that is probably the most famous of all these tea clippers, and also the most redundant, was the Cutty Sark. If you've ever been to Greenwich, have you ever seen the Cutty Sark?
I feel like I have seen it.
It's down in Greenwich in London, and it's near the Greenwich Observatory. So it's one of those things that you can quite easily see
I
and
feel
see
like
a variety of
I have
different places.
seen it, yeah.
Well, that famous ship was a Victorian tea clipper that cost around £16,150 to build in 1869. This would be worth somewhere around £2.4 million today if it was built.
Oof.
So not only is this probably the most famous tea clipper of the lot, it's also the most redundant of the lot because it was built in 1869. And in 1869 as well, the Suez Canal opened, meaning that the need for fast ships that could get around the Horn of Africa kind of went out the window, and it became kind of redundant. So as an example of basically spending an awful lot of money for the wrong project that got outdated. So clipper ships were incredibly fast for their time, and they've revolutionized global trade, and they became a huge reason why the British Empire became so obsessed with this drink, because it became the thing to get here. You know, the way that we basically wanted to drink. So for the first time in doing this, I've gone and done some outside investigation into tea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So well, over to me doing some outside tea investigation.
So, according to the UK Tea and Infusions Association, which is otherwise known as the UK TIA, they say about 84% of the UK population drinks a cup of tea every day. Now, that cup of tea is around 100 million cups that are consumed daily. And in fact, Britain is the third largest tea consuming country in the world. We are only just behind Turkey and the Republic of Ireland for drinking tea. And an astonishing 40% of the fluids that are drunk in the UK are actually cups of tea. So it is very much our favorite beverage and has been for, well, hundreds of years. So the history of tea in the UK is even more remarkable. Tea first arrived in the UK around the 1650s, and it was served as a sort of a novelty drink in coffee shops in London. Coffee was very much the bigger trend, the bigger thing for people to be drinking in large amounts. And very few consumed the drink at the time. However, it would appear that Samuel Pepys, the famous diarist, when he wrote about this, helped to encourage people a little bit. So the diarist wrote in his 1660 entry about tea, he said, "And afterwards I did send for a cup of tea, spelt with two E's at this point, or otherwise known as the China drink, probably not as PC today. However, it was obviously being shipped from China, of which I'd never drunk before and went away," which I guess means he kind of liked the drink. Doesn't really say whether he did or whether he didn't. It didn't matter whether really Pepys liked the drink or not. He popularized it in the process of writing about it in his diary, so much so that he may have actually been the first person to have properly written about it in the UK. However, it would actually not be Samuel Pepys. It would be the wife of King Charles II, Catherine Braganza, the daughter of Portugal's King John IV, would be the person who would actually take the honor of really driving people's fascination with this lovely drink. When she became queen, she popularized the drink in court, which meant that basically it became trendy to the point where everyone wanted to drink it and drove it forward as the drink that we see today. Tea became such a cultural part of the UK's psyche that during World War II, when tea stocks were actually threatened by German U-boats sinking shipments of the plant to the UK, that there was actually plans drawn up by Winston Churchill to see if tea could be grown in the UK. This actually raises the interesting question, can you grow tea in the UK? Let's find out, shall we? So the question, if you can grow tea in the UK, is a good one. You can, although my efforts are less than great. But tea is actually grown in the UK in several different places, from Devon and Cornwall even into Wales.
So it's a plant that likes cold, wet hillsides. As long as they have nice rich soil, they generally have the ability to grow quite well. Unfortunately, mine is, it's less than great, although I have less than great soil in my garden. But if you want to grow a tea bush, why not do it? You might be able to pick your own tea one day. Back to the studio.
Right, well, we're back from from me being in my own kitchen and garden, looking at my tea plant that I have.
Oh, thank you very much, investigative reporter Gareth.
You know what? It was one of the reasons I was like, oh, brilliant. I'll get outside and have a look at my tea plant. And you can see how small and weedy it is after about 8 years of me having that thing. So my garden's not.
We've gained an extra team member here.
What's that?
We've got investigative reporter on in the field.
Oh,
Gareth.
right. Well, we'll have to send you out to do some. So anyway, there is basically a lot of tea drunk in the UK. You know, it is probably I think it is the nation's favorite drink. Coffee comes close, but yeah, it is mostly drunk up and down the land, as it were. Question is, and this is whether it's one of those controversial topics. How do you like your tea to have? How much milk, sugar, what?
So how I like my tea,
I know you're not a massive fan.
I like the mug to be filled first with either chilled milk first or chilled water first, right?
Okay.
And then if it's milk, I don't add any water and I don't add any tea. And if it's water, I don't add any milk and I don't add any tea. So then I have a mug of milk or a mug of water.
Fair enough. I thought you were going to do some sort of like, and I like to steep it for like a couple of moments.
I like my milk shaken, not stirred.
Well, I like mine as white as I am, as white as that wall, with one sugar. So,
right, okay.
Which I think is the best way to have it. So there'd be some people who'd say that's sacrilege, and you know, what's the point in drinking it?
Yours is essentially milk with a hint of tea. And a hint,
Yeah,
and an even lesser hint.
I will
of sugar.
drink black tea as well. So yeah. Anyway, so the other thing that we need to look at when we're looking at any plant or animal that has value in humans' eyes is that we tend to put this species above the survival of all others.
Yeah, of course.
So we need to look at the conservation around this plant because. Yes, we like tea. We've looked at tea, the plant, and you know where it comes from in the wild naturally, but it is very much a domesticated plant by this point. It'd be like if we were looking at sheep or looking at cows. Those are very much not wild animals in the truest sense. So, with an estimated 2.16 billion cups consumed every day globally, wow. Which is a lot. I think my wife drinks at least. Some of those, you know,
does she make up the 1.6?
I think she may make up the 1.6, and she probably won't be that upset at me saying that. I think that's one of the main reasons she married me, is I can make a good cup of tea for her. The tea industry is a major player in the global economy. The market value is over $50 billion. That's a huge amount.
Yeah, that is huge.
Yeah, and that's spread right across the areas where tea is grown. Which is still the same sort of parts of the world that it's been found in culturally for thousands of years. However, the production of tea has significantly impacted the environment in a variety of different ways, from deforestation to pesticide usage, and some of the other areas that we're going to look at are things like soil erosion. So, as we said, tea plants require specific soil conditions. Basically everything my garden doesn't have, as is evident by how small my tea bush is. As a result, tea plantations often practice this as a monoculture, so it is the only plant that's there, which can often lead to soil erosion. They're usually on the hillsides as well, especially in the Himalayas and parts of upland China and basically where they grow naturally in the wild. So if the hills themselves aren't held together by plants that deep root, you can end up with soil being ripped away very easily in big storms.
Sounds a bit like it's a crop that I personally don't know what the soil conditions that are required for tea are, but it sounds like there must be something wrong with UK soil, because it sounds like the perfect crop for UK farmers.
Well, it is in some
likes
ways.
cold, it likes wet, it encourages ecosystem destruction. Sounds perfect for UK farmers.
Well, believe it or
Not all
not,
UK farmers, by the way.
but it doesn't have the deepest roots, so that's what's not
Right,
holding
yeah.
the ground together. Deforestation is another big area. To obviously make room for tea plantations, forests are often cleared, and this isn't usually done in a very environmentally friendly way. It's usually more slash and burn agriculture. And this deforestation leads to habitat loss for wildlife and soil erosion as well, because if you haven't got those big primary forest trees sort of holding the ground together,
Yeah.
that eventually leads to that. This also it adds to greenhouse gas emissions as well, and the locking up of carbon in big old trees. We also start to see a bit of an issue with wildlife in these areas.
Of course.
Now, there are a couple of sides to this. When it comes to the people who work in the tea fields, like who are picking the tea, they have to be careful, because in parts of India and Sri Lanka, there can be venomous snakes that like to hide out in the bushes. So they can often end up getting bitten, and a lot of people end up dying from that. So it is one of those sort of work hazards that you wouldn't really want, but if they haven't got the habitat, the snakes haven't got anywhere to hide, they're going to hide in the next best option.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of the time, they're sort of at chest height as well. So imagine being bitten by a venomous snake
on the chest.
On the chest, there's probably not, or on your hands as you're putting them into a bush, not going to be great.
Yeah.
Leopards are also a risk as well, because if those bushes are chest height, you're definitely not going to see a leopard sneaking up on you.
Don't go into the long grass.
That is genuinely what I think of a lot of the time with when I'm thinking of that. And also elephants as well. Asian elephants will come into tea plantations because they like the taste of it as much as we do. Which leads to conflict, and we tend to do what we do worst or best in some ways, is we eradicate animals that come into conflict. So there are better practices that can be done, and some tea plantations are better than others. It's all down to finding basically eco-friendly choices. You can focus on ones that are certified and source their practices in a better light.
Has there ever been any controversy on the certified issue?
I don't know,
because
this is the thing. It's such a huge industry spread across such a huge area. I would undoubtedly put money on it that there are people who are doing things in dodgy ways. And
there was with the roundtable on palm oil sustainability or whatever it was, wasn't there? And then just recently, I brought some news that was about RSPCA assured farms, and then weeks later, Chris Packham has now
come out and said that
he's no longer going to tolerate it, and he's left the organization, hasn't he?
Yeah. So it all comes down to finding ones that are going to be certified. There are ones that are certified by Soil Association certification, which basically means that they're looking after the area. There are ones that are organically grown without the use of pesticides or fertilizers, enhancing soil health. But the one thing that you could try and do, especially if you're in the UK or anywhere that sort of has similar climate, is you could go and grow your own. Now, you're probably not going to have, you're probably going to have the same sort of luck that I have with it, which is you're not going to be out there harvesting your own tea, but it is actually becoming far more commercially a viable crop grown in the UK. Tea plantations. There are tea plantations up and down the UK now, because it is a plant that grows relatively well here in the UK. So you weren't too far off with that.
No, my sarcasm was somewhat on point.
And you don't have to worry about the venomous snakes, leopards, or elephants.
No, because the pheasants have gotten rid of our venomous snakes.
Oh, there you go. But yeah, it is a plant.
Great job, UK.
Start it off on a good note. It is a plant that has massive historical significance in the UK, massive historical significance all across the world, and has been drunk by people for thousands of years, and will probably continue to be drunk for thousands of years. So it is one of those plants that we need to look at more from a sustainability point of view, but celebrate by having a cuppa. There you go. So that's tea. So yeah.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Should we head into our emails for the first time this year?
Yes, yes.
Bing! You've got mail. Ooh, it's an email.
So we're going to start things off this year with our first question, which is going to be, what is your favorite plant-based beverage? Now, there's a variety of things you could have. Obviously, you could have tea, you could have coffee, you could have hot chocolate. But thinking about it, you could also have orange juice.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You could also have grape juice. If you want to go for the more alcoholic version, you could have wine.
Mm.
If you want to have barley or wheat, you've also got the likes of beer, whiskey, all of those sort of different ones as well. So
Yeah.
there is a huge variety of different things.
Lot more variety than you initially think of when you hear that question. There is a lot of choices there.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go for something as boring as oat milk, you do you. You know, there's a huge variety of different like plant-based drinks out there. Personally, I think with me, I quite like whiskey and I quite like tea. So I'm gonna go whiskey.
Fair enough.
just because I can, really.
I'd go orange juice.
Oh, now you say it.
Without bits. Sin pulper.
Oh, see, I don't mind it either way. It's all good for me.
Without bits. Well, there.
Yeah.
No, I don't like my juice with bits of orange in. I
To
like my
remind you
orange
that it
and
was
I
an
like my orange
orange.
juice, but I don't want them in
Smashed together.
You know, I do want actual orange in it, but I don't want pieces of it. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes it feel more authentic.
Yeah. No, I know I'm just being fussy, but no, not for me.
Fair enough. Right, well, that will be up on our Facebook page where you can put your option as to what you feel is your favorite plant-based drink, and let us know. So, well, we don't have any the emails to talk about this week. Everyone's sort of taken the week off with emailing us, and we obviously don't have a question from last week, so we can jump straight into our Patreons. Aaron.
We do, yeah, and we're going to start this year off the way we ended last year with just a massive thank you to our wonderful Patreon supporters who support us on a financial kind of level, and those people to whom we are greatly appreciative are, of course, Fogtober, Jen Greenhall, Connie P, Chelsea Mickey, Nick to Nick, and Matt Geddy.
He's finally told you.
I was going to say he's corrected me. He's finally told me it's not Jedi. You'll always be a Jedi in my mind, though. But yeah, he has corrected me now. So yeah, but yeah, guys, happy New Year and thank you very much for continuing to support us into this first episode of 2025, and hopefully we can bring you some exciting things this year. Including more.
We've been testing out some different live stream ideas that are going
to
happen.
You've particularly had a fun time with
well, I'm not going to reveal.
But we won't. Yeah, we won't.
I'm not going to reveal too much. Needless to say, I've come up with an idea for a D&D-esque sort of one-off thing that is going to involve you and Drew. And I had to test it on someone. So what better way to test it than on my parents and in-laws over Christmas? All of which had never played, apart from one of them, had never played D&D before, which made for a very interesting evening to practice it. So it worked. So it should work for our purposes. So
Wonderful.
if it worked with my parents, then it should in theory work for this. So that if you're a Patreon, you have that to look forward to in the next couple of weeks. So yeah.
That's definitely one we could do whilst the weather's a bit grotty too, isn't it?
Definitely. There's nothing better than doing D&D in bad weather of an evening. You know, a couple of favorite plant-based drinks in whichever variety you like, you know, around, and yeah, so that should be interesting.
Yeah. Now, we appreciate all the support that all of our listeners offer us, whether that is just watching or listening, or whether that's liking, sharing, subscribing. We really can't ask you enough to, you know, like and share it, because it really pumps the algorithm. And comment, even if it's just to say hi, we will try and respond back to you as quickly as we can. But we're grateful for all of it. Now, if you are thinking of joining our Patreon and you're interested in that, we do have the Patreon website where you can go and learn more about the Nature Nerds and the Animal Ambassadors tiers. But with that said, the only thing left to say is just to, once again, a massive, massive thank you for your continued support, Patreons.
Yeah. Does a huge amount and allows us to do so much more than we did before. Oh, and there is one other thing I wanted to add on to the end of that, actually, because this week we started off our sort of battle of the animals for this year to see which animal will come out on top as the pick for 2024. So that started off. That's on our social media. It's it's over all of the platforms that we usually do sort of daily posts on. So you'll see it on either TikTok, Facebook, or Instagram, where most of our stuff goes up. So feel free to throw that in the comments as to which one you want on that day. There'll be a new one each day until we basically whittle it down to the final stages. There is a lot of animals on there that I spent a lot of time putting into that bracket to make it work, and hopefully it'll work. So yeah, vote for your animal as to which one you want to go through, and then we'll sort of pare it down as we go.
Very cool. Yeah, I always like this annual competition. It's always a good one to go with.
Then we'll have to have the greatest of all time ones.
We will have to face off the champions from each year,
which I can totally remember.
I can't.
Thylacine is one of them. I can't remember what the other years were.
Can't remember.
Yeah. So that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode, our first episode of the year. I think we've done well.
Yeah. First episode of the year. It's gone smoothly so far. It's good to be back. Yeah.
So that pretty much brings us to the end of this week's episode. So big thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And a big thank you to you at home for listening. And we'll see you next time here in the Natural History Cupboard. Bye.
Bye.
Aaron, I've got a joke for you. A tea-based joke.
Oh, yeah.
Two teacups sat next to each other. One says, shall we see how many... shall we see how much tea each of us can hold?
Okay.
And the other teacup turns around and goes, don't be foolish. That's a mug's game. That's the one.
That's the one.